Won't let me mute beforehand anymore.
Yeah, it won't let me either.
That's so weird. It does say that we're live. We haven't flipped around yet. We'll give it a couple more moments.
Yep.
Haha, there we go. Caught it. Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I hope everybody's doing very well. And thank you to all the pre-show talkers out there. It's always fun to talk with you guys and also just to see what conversations are going on as well. And Stephen Worth, I think if Stephen's still there, we are definitely praying for you, buddy, praying for your wife. So hopefully she gets home safe. So Big Johnson, how the heck are you?
First, I have to say hello, Gun Nation, but I'm actually doing very well. How are you this evening?
I'm doing pretty well. Guys, everybody, 17 will be on here relatively soon. He had to run an errand, so he will be back very shortly. But we thought we would kick off, of course, and hang out with you guys for a little while. I do have a topic to talk about. I'm going to save that until 17 is able to join, if he is. But just want to know how everybody else out there is doing. I do roll call, but, you know, we're getting to a point where everybody knows everybody. So just howdy to every single one of you guys. So Big Johnson, what's been going on, man? What's new with you?
I've been packing today. I have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, so it's not too far from now, and head out to Iowa for the weekend. So got some work to do out there. So tried to hook up with the Honest Outlaw, but I don't think it's going to work out. So.
Well, I hope you do, man. That would be fun. I would love to meet him as well at some point in time. Probably one of the nicest guys out there for sure. And love his content. He is a dedicated member of this chat circle as well. So hopefully you'll be able to work it out.
Yeah, I don't know. He's an hour and a half away from where I'm going to be, and they've got snow and all kinds of crap going out there. So I'm going to the frozen tundra, so to say, you know, Antarctica, I guess. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Fun indeed. Fun indeed. So, well, what else is new in the gun verse for you? Anything exciting and fun?
Got a new hanger for the STI holster, and kind of hooked that up today, and it's actually a really nice setup. And going to be putting the mag. I had to get new mag carriers for the STI because my old ones won't fit because it's double. It's the the STI larger 2011 mags. So I'm going to put those on and get those set up and set the belt up and kind of start working with it, see what I think about it. I'm still going back and forth between this and the TSO. So we'll see which one I end up liking.
Nice, nice. Alaskan Ballistics is saying with the burnt orange, you guys notice I redid the room here. People are going to think that I'm a Longhorns fan. Well, I like Texas. I have no problem with that, but I also just like the color orange quite a bit. I like the burnt orange. Did the ceiling, the trim, the whole 9 yards. All of that is stark white. I mean, it's like pure white, and a little bit of sheen to it as well. So it looks better, not necessarily on camera light, but anyways, needed a little change of scenery there. You know, it's funny. I did a little wandering around today. I've had the past couple of days off from work just to take a break, and I was looking around for some of the other guns that are kind of on my list after SHOT Show, like the Mossberg and the SIG X Compact, that sort of thing. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing is out there. Nobody has them yet, at least locally. And I like to buy local whenever I can. So that was a real bummer. I kind of feel like we're falling down a little bit here in Kansas, even though the stores were all stocked. They had a lot of neat stuff, but just not the stuff that was necessarily on my list.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I haven't seen any of the Mossbergs either. So it's going to be, interesting. I mean, I'm not going to personally buy one, but it's going to be interesting, to put my hand on it and pull the trigger and see what I think about it.
Yeah. Well, Frontier Justice, they had one and apparently sold it very quickly. And then they had one that was on a transfer there today, and they allowed me to take a look inside the box. It was actually still kind of saran wrapped against the back border of it. So it hadn't been removed yet and inventoried and that sort of thing. And so, I didn't want to touch it, and they didn't really want to open it up too much. But I got to kind of glimpse at it for a moment or two. I mean, it looks like kind of a cool little gun. So I'm hoping to be able to get a hold of one of those pretty soon. Texas Teacher is saying the 320X Compact. Yeah, I'm very interested in that. I'm hoping I'm really hoping that there's a 320 out there that I might actually hold on to for a lengthy period of time and do more than 2 videos with, something like that. So because I like the idea of those guns, if nothing else.
What's up, 17?
What's up, gentlemen?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Oh, busy as always.
Yeah.
Same old freezing, snowing, and icing out. I mean, it's awesome.
That sucks.
It's like summer vacation.
Yeah, Pistol Pete, the video is out about that hammer and stuff that you were asking about. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm about to head to the frozen tundra too, so I'll be dealing with that crap. Hopefully the plane gets me out and gets me back.
Well, that's always a plus.
Yeah. Yeah. Good old airports. Pop's Quest is just here to thumb it down. Sweet. Add to that thumb down.
I know, right? Well, we've gotten 3, so that's pretty exciting. Okay, so here's the thing. I basically, every video that I put out, there are about 4 thumbs down that happen within the first 24 hours, no matter what. So on these chats, you get the reminder that's out long enough throughout the day that those dedicated fans, they hit it right away. And so, I appreciate their tenacity on it. I mean, that's pretty dedicated to basically not send any message whatsoever to anyone other than how to click a button. So I think that's pretty cool.
Right. And the word fanatic doesn't necessarily mean positive, so they can be people who hate you as well.
Yep.
No, that's not it. They love me. They love me.
Yeah, on every one of my videos, I think I have at least 3. So, it's probably the same haters. But like I said, even if they leave a thumbs down, it counts as a what is it called?
Interaction.
So still positive.
Exactly right. It's exactly right. So, I do have one topic for everybody. This is everybody out in the crowd. This is for my esteemed panelists here as well. So I was.
Where are they?
Do what?
Where are they?
I don't know. So you guys are gonna have to do. Kathleen, dial it down a notch if you don't mind. But I want to know for you guys, everybody out there, where do you buy your firearms? I know we've talked about this before. I'm talking online. I'm talking local gun shops, big box gun stores, which I consider totally separate. So we're talking your mom and pop corner stores, or your maybe Cabela's or something like that. Where do you buy your firearms, and how do you do it? What's most important to you when you're going to buy your firearms? I mean, are you looking for an experience where there's a real connection with someone, or are you looking to just go buy the firearm and that's it? Are you going to try and wheel and deal? What types of things are you doing to set yourself up for buying firearms? And the reason that I ask this is because I had the day off today, and a lot of times if I've got a day off and I can kind of kick around and the traffic isn't quite so bad, I try and kind of hop around to all of the local gun shops, even the big box stores, just to see what's out there and see what's going on. You every once in a while get the itch, right? And you just want to see what's out there. And I'll share my experience here in a moment, but that's what fanned this question, so to speak. So for you two fellas, where do you guys buy your firearms? What's important to you for buying your firearms?
Go ahead, 17.
Well, I mean, for me, it's kind of different because there really are no big box stores anymore around here. There was Gander Mountain, but their prices were just ridiculously stupid. Dick's Clothing and Sporting Goods, enough said with that. And that's it. There's really no Cabela's near me or anything. So for me, you have to find the mom and pops type of stores. So there's a local one. Should I say the name or no?
Sure. Who cares?
There's a couple of local ones. Like there's the Thruway Sporting Goods store, which is sometimes I get my used guns from them because their prices on guns are ridiculous. For example, the Glock 48 with night sights, I think, is running $648 right now in that store. Wow. So I can't waste money doing that stuff. So if they have a used gun, usually the prices are pretty solid. So I'll go with a used gun from them. And then the one that I actually always plug is Wallkill River Small Arms. Frank is the owner, great guy, works much better deals with you, and he can get anything you want. So I tend to go to him a lot. And then depending on if it's something that he can't get right away, I'll go to Gun Broker. That's usually the place that I hop on for really, really good deals.
Okay.
I go to a local store called K5 Arms. Y'all have probably seen, I've done Instagram pictures and stuff with some of their guns, and, I can go in and touch them and feel them and do all that stuff. Sometimes I buy from them, but I actually buy a lot from Grab a Gun. I get daily emails, and also if there's a particular gun I'm looking for, I'll go in and put my email in there, and the second they get it, I mean, and it's not that I have maximum priority, but the second you get it, you got to just hit buy now, and then put your credit card information in, because Grab a Gun is actually local to me, so I can go to the Coppell location and pick it up there, and there's no FFL fees. But I do have to pay Texas tax, of course, but you know, supporting my own state, so not a super big deal there. But I buy a lot from Grab a Gun. So, and if I've already got the gun, I'll still get the alerts. And if somebody says, hey, I'm looking for that particular gun, when I get the alerts, you know, I'll send them to y'all saying, hey, they've got them, or I'll send them out to a bunch of friends and stuff and let them know that they're available. And they've actually bought off of that too, saying, hey, you know, cool, didn't know they had any, I can't find any in my area or something like that. So a lot of people appreciate that too.
Nice, nice. Well, I've been watching some of the different responses that that everybody's had, and I'm getting the sense that it's not quite as all over the board as I thought it might be. A lot of people are saying that first, price is really important, which makes sense. It really does. So a lot of people do online buying, whether it be a gun buyer or gun broker, or Grab a Gun, like you say, Big Johnson, things like that. And so I'm not seeing quite as many, although occasionally, like Stephen Worth was saying, a couple of small stores here and there. Some others have said that as well, but most people are saying on the online for the most part. And I might have a follow-up question to that, but you guys know I like to buy local whenever I can. I mean, I try and support first and foremost Centerfire Shooting Sports. I've got a good relationship with them, but they, you know, they're the kind of place that you know, they'll work with you a little bit, as much as they can. I mean, you know, whatever flexibility they have to still be able to keep the lights on and
Sure.
feed the employees and that sort of thing. But what's on the sticker isn't necessarily what you're going to pay. Sometimes it is. I mean, sometimes there isn't a lot of wiggle room, but sometimes they'll try and work with you, which is really cool. And then Frontier Justice, I've always had a good experience there. Now, their prices might be a tiny bit higher, but sometimes you can negotiate with them as well. I think they try and take a pretty realistic approach to things. But I went to a different store, and I won't mention the name of this because I don't want to put it down or anything. It was actually my first experience with this store, and I would consider it a big box store. It's not quite as big box or well known as something like a Bass Pro. It wasn't something like that. But excuse me, they had some very nice firearms. I mean, they had a very good selection, a lot of shotguns and long guns, and some pretty nice pistols. And I went in to inquire about a specific one, and this was a more expensive handgun. This was a pretty pricey handgun because I've kind of been interested in it in a while, and talked to the guy, and even had a potential trade-in offer as well, because I wanted to see how they would treat that and how they would treat the price, both of the trade-in and of the new gun. Now, keep in mind, I don't trade in guns generally. I sell them. On the aftermarket, you tend to make a lot more money back doing that, as long as you're careful with it, you get the right paperwork. But I keep hearing this clicking.
That's me. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I gotta ask you guys a question when you're done, because it's it's about the 48. But.
Okay, all right. So you're doodling. I appreciate that. But anyway. So this guy, you know, I tried to approach it as a relatively knowledgeable purchaser, I guess, of firearms. I kind of know my way around stores and prices and that sort of thing. And basically, he wanted to give me, it was like 45% of the regular price for this particular firearm, which is basically a brand new model to the market. It's a nice handgun, that sort of thing. I'm not going to tell you guys what it is, but you know, between his offer of that and he had no flexibility with this higher end firearm. He said he wouldn't shake at the price at all on this. And his presentation was absolutely terrible. He was very gruff about it and kind of disinterested as well. And so it's kind of one of those things where I will never go back in that store again. I don't ever want to give them any business or anything like that. And it was a real shame to have that kind of experience, because the store itself was a very nice store. I mean, they had some really cool stuff there, and you know, seemed like the kind of place where you'd want to do a little bit of shopping, and you know, I will never give them their business. And it was kind of an interesting experience. And generally speaking, most gun stores, you know, have some people that are actually pretty cool. Now, some of the bigger box stores, maybe not. They're just there. They're, you know, making, you know, their whatever salary they're making, and they are not necessarily into guns or anything like that. But it was just kind of an interesting experience.
Have you ever, in a gun shop, have you noticed that there's a lot of people who work in these gun shops but know very little about guns?
Oh yeah. 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 Walk in the door and they're like, "Oh, you need a Glock 19X or a Glock 19. It's the best gun in the world. Here you go."
Well, and that in and of itself doesn't necessarily bother me entirely too much, because it's easy to push something that a lot of people have heard of, right? And it's a moderately priced firearm and that sort of thing. I mean, most people say, "Oh, Glock, I've heard of that before. I'll buy one." So I kind of get that. But it's another thing when you can't answer certain questions about it, like how many rounds does it take, or tell me this spec or that spec, or how many mags come in the box or whatever. I don't know. That's where I struggle a little bit, where it's just kind of I don't know. I mean, I went to another big box store again. I basically did the entire circle today. Went to another big box store, and the guy that I talked to there, he's been there forever. And he has always been incredibly disinterested. And I sort of expect that from him. Some of the other guys at the counter are actually really knowledgeable. So I kind of give this place a pass a little bit. But I asked him a question about, hey, do you have the new Mossberg pistol? He goes, "I've never heard of it." And that was it. It was kind of like, seriously? I mean, do you want to Google it or something and just kind of see what's going on? So it's just a very interesting and very different experience today with shopping.
Well, I've had a lot of gun stores where I go in and I'm like, "Hey, do you have this particular firearm?" And they're like, "I've never heard of it. I don't even know what you're talking about." And, some I've pulled them up on my phone and I'm like, "Here it is." And they're like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Because we kind of, they're in a gun store. They might only deal with their specific inventory. And, maybe they don't branch out, and, maybe they're not into guns. They just kind of work there, and I've got some of those guys that I deal with that are they're just there to, they're just somebody they're breathing, and
Well, a lot of these gun stores too get kickbacks based on what they sell. So I was talking to some people the other day, and they were telling me that if they sell, of all things, Springfield handguns, they actually will receive a free one for themselves. So they're, every time I go in, they're like, "Oh yeah, man, you should try this XDS or whatever." And I feel like telling them, they're getting something back if you buy that, right? But I don't.
Glock does the same thing. They have.
I'm sure they all do. It's a part of business.
Sell so many Glocks, you get a free Glock.
Sure.
So,
well, and to a degree, that actually makes sense, right? That's a sales and marketing thing. So you are willing to maybe give a bigger break to a store that buys bulk. I mean, Centerfire stocks a lot of Glocks. They sell a lot of Glocks, and they would definitely admit it. Now they're very knowledgeable. They've got a good selection, and they'll talk about any gun you want to talk about with them. But that is certainly one of the go-to guns, and it just they're an authorized dealer and they buy in bulk, so they get to save a little bit more money. So it kind of makes sense. I kind of get that. And that isn't necessarily a problem with me. However, when it's a kickback, when you start talking about free guns and that sort of thing, it changes the dynamic a little bit, because all of a sudden, instead of, maybe they'll mention this gun and say, Glock 19 is pretty common gun, so that might be one to look at. But then here are two other guns you ought to look at as well. Why don't you hold these? Or, hey, we've got them on the rental range or something like that. Right. Whereas instead focusing on one gun and one gun only, because in the back of your mind, you're going, I might get a free one out of this or something like that. That's a little bit more problematic.
Yeah, and y'all probably get asked this all the time. I get asked, questions like, "Hey, if you could choose between this gun, this gun, this gun, and this gun, which one would you choose?" And I ask, like, what are you going to use it for? What style grip do you prefer, a 1911 or a Glock? What have you shot the most of? And I ask a lot of questions, just to give them, a specific answer or maybe a couple of different choices. I don't just go, "Hey, you look like a Glock guy," or, "Hey, you look like a 1911 guy." If you don't ask questions, I mean, I've walked in many times and they're just like, "Oh, come over here to the Glock counter." They don't know me from Adam. They don't know anything about it. So it's just that presumption, that this is, and then I'll look on their hip at a gun store because they're carrying and they got a Glock, or they've, got that type of loyalty, or they're going to get a kickback. So, everybody's different. So.
Right. Well, that's very true. I had another comment on that, and now I can't remember what it was. I got derailed, unfortunately.
Well, Dennis says if he watches Survivor, his wife will let him buy another gun.
There you go.
Nice. Actually, I just remembered it was something that Kathleen said. She was talking about being judged in gun stores. Have you ever been into a gun store where you feel like they're talking down to you, like they perceive that you know absolutely nothing?
Many times.
Yeah, I think that's, and it's usually the younger guys who are working in the stores where they look at you and then they start talking about like a Glock or something, but then you start rattling off everything, and then they're like, oh boy, they realize you're matching wits and they can't compare to what you know. And I mean, it's not like a pissing contest when you go in there. And honestly, when I go to a gun shop, I don't want to be harassed either. I want to go in, I want to be able to look around. I want to be able to, grab a couple of guns from the counter and see, how they feel in my hands. And if they're kind of pestering and if they're kind of being, belligerent, then it's not worth staying there,
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever thought about playing dumb, and kind of being like, hey, I don't know anything about guns. I just want a simple gun with a clipazine that's easy to shoot, and it gets the target right away. I don't have to think about it. I mean, something like that. Have you ever thought about kind of playing stupid and seeing what happens?
I actually have. That's exactly what I was going to say. I've played dumb in gun stores before too, and man, I've heard it all. Just like, wow, okay, but I mean,
so here is my challenge, and then we had to start taking some questions unless you guys have another topic. But my challenge to everybody out in the crowd: this is your homework, and I want you to come back and report next week on what happens. But if you can, take a little time out and go to a gun shop, preferably one that they don't know you or know you very well, maybe a big box store or whatever, and play dumb. And see what happens, see what they suggest, see what recommendations they have, or if they try and push you towards one certain thing. I would be very curious to know, because we've got a great sample size of people here who can kind of test this theory to find out what the stores are doing. If you feel like they've got some sort of an agenda or something like that, or if they push you towards one specific brand, one specific model, or if they're a little bit more all-encompassing, if they talk down to you, things like that. I would be very interested to hear what you guys report back next week. So that is your homework.
Ooh. Now, real quick, this is just a quick question. Have you also had it the other way where you're just kind of standing there looking at guns, and then the guy says, like a dad's in there buying a gun for his daughter, and the guy's like, oh yeah, for your first gun, you should get her a 45 1911 or just something crazy, and you're just like, whoa, but you don't say anything because it's not your place. But
I mean, I haven't really ever heard any crazy ones. I usually hear them recommend like a 380 to a female, 38, something like that. And I'm always saying to myself, why not just go with a 9mm in the shield, or something like that. Like you said, it's not my place. I don't really tell anybody anything unless somebody asks me.
Yeah, I don't, unless they ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, anything else you guys want to bring up? Talk about?
I do want to bring up a question for the Glock 48 people. Big Johnson, maybe you'll know just by knowing, but one of the problems I'm having with the gun, it's not really a problem, is when I take the gun down, right, and I separate it from the lower, which, by the way, it's very, very tough to get it off the lower, which is weird. A lot of friction there. I'm noticing that when I go to put it back on, this guide rod is giving me problems. Like it's not centered a lot, so I can't just slide it back on. I actually have to play around with the guide rod in order for it to go back onto the lower. I'm just curious if anybody else is having that problem, or is it something I'm doing wrong? I'm not sure.
That would be user error.
Yeah, well,
I just recommend you throwing it behind you and calling it a day.
Right.
Like
right.
I actually have to like jiggle it on there to get that guide rod to follow in here properly. It's just really awkward. And the one thing I don't understand, like, why didn't they just go with a full extended guide rod, instead of cutting it into a 43 guide rod? That's the only thing I'm not sure why they did that. I don't know if they could.
I would imagine it's probably to cut cost. That would be my theory on that. But I agree. The guide rods on the 48 and the 43X, both, they're a little bit sloppy, a little bit loose. Yeah. So when you pop it open, they just kind of fall out. But if you pop it in there just right, there's just this tiny, tiny little ledge. If you catch it just right, it should fit in there.
It seems like the guide rod is actually falling below that, so it's not like holding it properly. I found that was odd, and I know Baldy's saying that he had the same with his 48. So
Yeah, if you stick your tongue out, it'll probably work better.
I figure if I just throw it at the wall, eventually it's going to go where it needs to be.
It'll fix it.
A ball peen hammer, I think, actually is the way to go.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the guide rod is a bit of an issue, but you know, it could be just me. Could be just this gun. I don't know.
Maybe it'll get better. You know, the more you jack.
I mean, it hasn't caused any issues for the gun, but it's just, you know, getting it back onto the frame.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird.
Interesting.
Yeah. Maybe they did it that way so the upper would fit on a 43. You know,
I mean, the only other gun that I ever had an issue with that, with the guide rod in particular, is the P320, because you have to have it turned a certain way for it to actually recoil back.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything's fine. You know, the 19 is fine. The 19X is fine. It's whatever it is. It's just something about that guide rod.
Yeah. So Hurt One has a question. We got to answer some questions here, although I haven't seen that many actual questions yet. But Hurt One is saying, what are your thoughts on the $1,200 agency syndicate? And for those who don't know, although most of you probably do, the agency syndicate, there are two different choices out there. You can either get just the slide and the barrel, that everything all put together. It's got the sights and all that, but then you could also do all of that plus the polymer lower and the parts, and then you put it together like any other polymer 80. So what do you guys think of that? Me
personally, I'm not about that. I just think it's I mean, it looks nice, but you know, it just doesn't do anything for me personally.
You guys know how I feel about $1,200 guns, handguns at least. I mean, I mean, if you can afford it, great. You know, I'm not going to blame you. If you want one, go get it. But I don't get the whole point of, you know, owning something like that. Now I know, you know, people will chime in, but my Atlas and this and that, and that. Look, that's great, man. I'm glad you guys have that. But for me, it's not something that I'm attracted to in regards to price. I just find that it's like, you know, it's just a little bit too gaudy of a gun for me at that price.
Gotcha. Before I say anything, Greg Miller, thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate that, man. That's extremely generous of you. Much appreciated. Always helps. So Hurt, I've looked into that as well. And I actually kind of contemplated a little bit because I think they've got two different versions of the slide. And one of them has a couple of window cutouts and the other one is just knurling on both the back and the front. They're kind of cool looking slides and all that. They're nice barrels. I've got a couple of agency barrels and they've held up very well. But $1,200, I mean, I sat back and I priced my different polymer 80s that I've done. And actually I mean, this is the most expensive one I have is right here in front of me. And this is a Safiri Precision Glock 34. You guys haven't really seen it yet on camera. It will be here eventually, but it still came in. I mean, it was like $850 priced out. So that would be the street price for that. And it's got all the bells and whistles. And so $1,200, I feel like it's a little bit high for what it is. I mean, their stuff is nice. Don't get me wrong. And I have nothing wrong with, you know, agency arms or anything like that. But that is a pretty proud price for a polymer 80, especially when you have to factor in the fact that you're putting it together. And there is always a chance of some idiosyncrasies, some variances and tolerance issues and that sort of thing, to where it's not as good of a quality as I think $1,200 should probably represent. So, you know, enter at your own risk. But if you're a big fan of agency, or you just like that style a lot, or you want the challenge of the polymer 80 and you want it all in one box so you don't have to source it all out to different companies, it might be a really good way to go. So I've heard good things about him, like Talonsay. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. Yeah. He had a pretty cool video on it. He thought it was pretty cool. And there's some other ones as well. So, I just kind of go with what you dig, man. Go with what you dig.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have a question. What's the most expensive gun that you've ever shot?
It's from Dexter.
Yes, I believe so. It went by.
17?
Shadow 2. I mean, handgun, right?
Yeah, well, just
Shadow 2. I mean, handgun wise, Shadow 2 is the most expensive.
What about you?
Me, the Nighthawk Custom. I did a review very early on in the channel. I think it still has like 300 views. There aren't as many people looking for that type of firearm, but I think that was probably the most expensive. I don't know. It was like $3,300 for that. That is a beautiful gun, man. That was a beautiful gun.
Yeah. Probably, well, I was going to say, other than a High Point, Probably the most expensive gun I've ever shot was a Les Bear Custom. So
that's a nice gun. You know, it's funny. Dan O'Neill is saying $1,000 gun won't make you $1,000 shooter. I think that's a fantastic point, and that's exactly right. I mean, I would encourage people not to get in their mind that they have to spend more money to be a better shooter, to have better skills or anything. You build those over time. You guys remember I was a drummer for a really long time, and I started out on a really junky drum set, whatever. And I remember somebody very early on, when I wanted the next best thing, I wanted the really cool, flashy drum set. And of course, my parents were like, no. One of my drum instructors said, you know what? It doesn't matter. Really good drummers can take a crappy drum set with crappy heads and crappy sticks, tune it just right, and it can still sound absolutely brilliant. So it doesn't matter what you're playing. It's not the instrument as much as it is the musician, or in this case, the shooter. So I think that's a really good point.
I do, and I agree with that. Like how Tiger Woods could take a $200 set of golf clubs and probably kick everybody's ass, but kind of playing that on a different point. If you took a stock Glock, and let's just use Glock. Okay, if you took a bone stock Glock straight out of the box and say you've never shot a Glock, okay, and you shot that Glock and you shot it however you shot it, and then you took a really nice tuned Glock with a nicer trigger, better sights, something like that. Do you think you would shoot better for an average shooter between the two guns?
I think the trigger has a lot to do with it. I think that'll make a major improvement on how you shoot. Shape of trigger, lighter take up, better reset. I think that's where you become a better shooter. Maybe lazier, but definitely a better shooter.
Yeah. What do you think, KS?
I mean, if you've got solid fundamentals, yes, then I think you taking advantage of upgraded parts, upgraded guns, upgraded all that kind of thing to dial it into your needs. I think that can make a dramatic difference. But you've got to start with there are building blocks there, right? You've got to start at the very beginning. You've got to have that base foundation before you can start really noticing and taking advantage of some of those other tricks out there, some of those other parts and firearms and all that kind of thing. I mean, at least that's what I've always understood it to be.
Yeah, and see, I kind of did a test on my own kiddo when I was teaching her shoot and all that other stuff, and gave her just the basic gun, then gave her a better gun, and with a little more weight, better trigger, better sights, etc. And it was like night and day, and I was just like, wow, So I know that people can train, I hear this all the time, you don't need that trigger. Train, to shoot the gun and be proficient with that gun. And I agree with that. I understand that. But when you've got those basic fundamentals out of the way, why would you drive, a Yugo when you could drive a Ferrari? And I'm not even saying a Ferrari, or you could drive a really nice Chevy truck. It's just, if you have the way or the means to do that, and you're more proficient with it, and you can get shots on target better, and you can hit that 15-yard bad guy better than you could a crappy trigger where you might spray the guys or the good people next to them. Why would you not take advantage of that? I mean, it's crazy how people are like, you don't need that. You don't need that. Maybe you don't, but I prefer it. Right. It's just my opinion.
I also think when you, let's say you start off with a Yugo.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody knows what that is at this point. But let's say you start off with a Yugo. But then you get that Ferrari. Honestly, I would rather have somebody start off with that Yugo, because if you throw them in behind the wheel of a Ferrari, the likelihood of them wrapping it around a telephone pole or something is probably a lot greater than driving that Yugo. And I think the same kind of falls under the play of guns, because if I had two guns, and let's say I had let's say a Glock versus a PPQ. Person starting out, I would always say start out with that Glock, because that PPQ trigger it's a different animal. You know what I mean? It's super light, 100% pre-cock striker. That's a gun that, to me, you don't necessarily want to start off with, because you may not have the trigger control, the fingering control. The likelihood of doing double taps when you don't want to is a lot greater. So I don't know. I think sometimes you got to start slower, but it's like anything else. And I think KS, you made a good point that, you know, you have this crappy drum set and you want the next best thing. But at the same time, you really should master that crappy drum set first before you decide to move up to anything else, because it's going to be a greater demand on maintaining, maybe learning, maybe, you know, just kind of getting the ins and outs of what that new thing is. But, you know, everybody's different. You know, if you want to start going 200 miles per hour right out the gate, go for it. You know, as long as you're proficient and you start teaching yourself, or, you know, get the proper training, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And it was funny. Bald and Curious was saying, what was it exactly? I got to go back to his comment here real quick. Bald, what the hell did you say? You said a better gun will make you a better shooter. I see where you're going with that, and I don't disagree with that necessarily, but I think you will make you a better shooter. And again, I think it goes back to fundamentals. Jonathan T. John was saying that some people think that the Ferrari will hide poor mechanics, and I think to a degree that's true. I mean, I remember towards the busiest part of my drumming career, I had this huge, massive drum set, tons of cymbals, drums, and bells and whistles, and the whole 9 yards. And it was kind of a ridiculous thing. And by the end of my career, I was taking a bass drum and a snare, a tom, and a couple of cymbals, and that's it. I was traveling as light as I possibly could. I appreciated getting in and getting out of a place much more than I did when I was a little bit younger, and I could accomplish almost the same stuff with the little set because the fundamentals were there. They were solid. I knew what I was doing, and there was a lot of comfort with that. And so I didn't need a lot of extra stuff to hide behind or to mask imperfections and idiosyncrasies and that sort of thing. And I think that can definitely be translated into firearms as well. Again, I think you really a better gun can be a great thing, but I think you have to have the fundamentals. I mean, I'm still working on the fundamentals. I've been shooting for 30 plus years, and I still think that I've got a lot to learn about that. And I'm constantly trying to involve just fundamental things, just grip and trigger control and stance and all of those types of things. And so it's a lot of fun to enjoy, an STI or something like that. I mean, it's all cool and everything, but I can accomplish the same stuff with a Taurus G2C or something like that. I know that's kind of a bold statement. I'm not trying to compare those two guns by any means, but it's all about the fundamentals. It's all about all of those basic parts that go together to put together a good shooting experience. And then once you have all of those things put together and you know how you react to a gun and how you hold the gun and how your trigger finger works and your sight alignment and all that kind of stuff, then going and enjoying the TSOs and the Les Bears and all of those types of things can be a lot of fun. But then you can really sit back and enjoy because you're not trying to fight bad fundamentals doing it. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, and I think Triple C brought it up, and he was saying how he's taking courses with people or Navy SEALs, I think he said, or something, where they were using stock triggers on 17s and 19s. And I mean, but again, that's the whole point. Start off with something that is bare bones, and then once you come like really proficient, then you do what you want. But I'm not saying I'm anywhere near trained like a SEAL, but it's all depending on what you're comfortable with, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Now, I do have a question for you. Because we've kind of been talking about broad spectrums of firearms, especially costs and that sort of thing, and putting techniques into it and all that kind of stuff. But here's something a little bit different as well. Again, in my exploration today around all these gun stores, thinking about lots of different things. So if you have the opportunity to buy a dream gun, whatever that dream gun is, and whether it's a Barrett or a Les Bear or a Shadow 2 or whatever it happens to be, and you've got some guns sitting in the safe that are fine guns, nothing wrong with them, but let's say they're less expensive, maybe you don't use them very often, or maybe you do use them, but you really want this thing, you have the opportunity, and it appears at a local store, and maybe it usually does something like that. Would you consider selling those other guns and going and getting that dream gun? What do you think about that?
Go ahead, 17.
I've been thinking about that, because I have a problem. Like when I buy stuff, it's very difficult for me to let it go. Like a lot of the guns that you see in my channel, I still have, some of them I don't, because they didn't work for me overall. But I have a problem. I have this problem of not being able to let stuff go. So it's always difficult for me to go out and see that dream gun and say, man, I'd have to sell this, and that. And then I'll come home and I'll pull them out of the safe and I'll play around with them a little bit. I'll put them in my hand and dry fire them a bunch. And I'm like, all right, I guess I get rid of this gun. And then I'll dry fire them, but I just can't do this one. And then I'll go back to the original and say, oh, I can't do this one either for this reason. So I always talk myself out of doing that. So I don't know if I could. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah. What I've done is, and I have, I'm not just like I also collect guns, but so, I mean, I've got guns I shoot all the time. I've got some I collect and I don't shoot that much, but I've maybe taken out 5 guns and I'm like, okay, when's the last time I shot this gun? When's the last time I played around with it? I have guns that I haven't even shot in 2 years. They're just sitting there. So what I've done is I've taken them and I might take 3 or 4 of them to the range and kind of shoot them against each other. Like they're very similar guns, but which one wins? And then I might keep the one that wins, and the one that doesn't, I'll put in a pile, and that might be the gun that goes. And yes, I have gotten rid of some guns to get a gun that I really wanted. I don't get rid of a lot of guns, but I've gotten rid of, I don't know, maybe a handful, and some that I just completely hated, or that I went back and revisited, and I just didn't shoot them like I used to, or I've found something I really like better, or a double action, single action I really like better. So, I mean, people, and I even see it in the chat, don't ever get rid of guns. Don't ever get rid of guns. If they're not a collector gun and they're just a production gun, like a VP9 or something, or a Glock that you can just go out to any store and buy any day you want, why not get rid of it? I mean, unless it, your grandfather gave it to you, I can understand that. I've got guns I won't get rid of too, but if it's a prized possession, keep it. If it's just a production gun you can pick up every day on the street, why keep it if you're not enjoying it?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Being a reviewer, there's a little bit of a challenge there because I can't keep them all. I'd love to be one of those people that never sells a firearm. I mean, that would be really cool, but the reality of it is I can't do that. So I've got a stash of firearms that will never go away, like the Shadow 2 or the TSO, guns like that. And then the P80s as well. Those would never go. But everything else is I could probably get rid of any of those, because they're not rare. They're not necessarily special. They're good guns. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're not necessarily anything that I couldn't turn around and potentially get again if I really wanted to. And I've done that a couple of times. You guys know that. So I really, if I found something that I really, really wanted, and it was something that, especially if it was something that I knew that could be in that sort of special collector's bin, so to speak, then I would really have no problem saying, okay, you 1, 2, 3, 4 guns or whatever, I'm going to have to part with you. We may see each other again someday down the road, but for now, that's kind of my target, so to speak. So I don't really have a problem doing that.
Now, do you guys have anything in particular now that you have in ownership that you could part ways with? Is there one that comes right to mind as to what you'd part away with?
Yeah, I mean, I actually sold a gun today. Actually, I mean, like the Glock 45, I walked away from it. It's a fantastic gun, but I've got the 19X as well. And I actually kind of like the 19X a little bit better. The more I handled it, went and did kind of what Big Johnson suggested. And I took them both to the range, and they are very similar. I mean, they really are, but I like the look of the 19X a little bit better. And it's got more rounds through it, and it's become kind of a suppressor host and that sort of thing. And so I was like, the 45, I don't need, that's not a thing. So, yeah, I mean, if somebody said you had to sell a gun right now, I mean, I could easily pick one out.
Do you have anything in particular, like a specific one?
No, I wouldn't mention it here, but I could certainly sell one and not think twice about it if I needed to.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've probably got about 3 right now that I could sell or trade or get rid of. And, some other people have mentioned in the chat, like if you trade it in, you lose 80% and stuff. And I'll be flat honest with you. I have traded used guns and I bought them brand new and I have made money on them. I mean, I've made more than I actually paid for them. And I've done that many times. So, because there's an ass for every seat. So, I mean, you don't, it's how you buy and sell too. That's a thing. People, if you're going to pay full MSRP for a gun, yeah, you might take a bath. But you know, if you're smart about buying them, you can buy them right and sell them right. But yeah, there's 3 that I would actually get rid of today. I don't want to say what they are, but you know, yes. And then there's been some questions about collector guns. What do you have guns that you would? Now I know KS kind of mentioned it a second ago, but do you have guns like what are the guns that like in your collection that you would never part with?
Neither one of my P01s.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would say TSO Shadow 2, the SP01 Orange, the P01 Omega. It's funny that those are all CZs. This STI might actually be a keeper forever. The Archon is a keeper forever. That's just a phenomenal gun. Sorry, Bulb. He keeps asking for that one. I think those would be the ones. And then the P80s, of course. I mean, the P80s would be here forever. And I like them because I made at least part of them. And so there's kind of something special in it there as well. And then I'm actually just wrapped on episode 3 of this kid right here tonight. So that's a keeper forever as well. That's just been a lot of fun. So yeah, there are definitely some that are they're safe from hands as far as I'm concerned.
Cool. I've got, and people probably won't know what these are, but I've got some old firearms, 32 hex barrel single shot. A lot of people call it a chicken gun, and it actually works. I've got a punt gun, which probably and these guns I will not show on YouTube, but I've got a punt gun, 10 gauge shotgun that is like 10 feet tall, and they're very rare. I've got a German Mauser that was my grandfather's in the German War, and it's actually got the swastika on it. So those are really rare. You know, I collect old 22 pumps, so I've got a ton of those old-timey ones. But you know, those I'll never get rid of. And the TSO Shadows I would never get rid of for the modern guns. But I just think that if you've got some of those type of guns, historical firearms that you want to pass down to your kids or family members, I would never get rid of those. I've seen people walk into gun stores, literally going through a divorce or whatever, and the wife walks in and she sets these things up on the counter, and I'm like, holy crap. She goes, I won't sell these. And I'm like, I'll buy them right now. You know, I mean, because the guy's going to give her like, you know, $200 for them.
Right,
like,
right.
Oh, hey, let's go back out to the parking lot. Come on. You know, I'll treat you better.
Yeah, but don't make that the introductory line to her. Hey, why don't we go out to the parking lot?
Yeah, no. But you know,
work your way up to that.
Stranger danger.
Yeah, I actually saw, and this is no lie, I saw a guy went out with a 2-wheeler and brought a crate in of guns that she was getting rid of her husband's guns. And I was like, holy crap. And they were some that you'll never see. And, you know, they offered her an offer and she took it, but I was just like, holy crap. Matter of fact, if you ever watch the K5 video where I was doing the tour of the store, you can hear her. That's when she actually comes in, you can hear her in the background going, yeah, I want to sell all my husband's guns. She's actually in the video. You can hear her in the background, and I'm just going, holy crap. So you see it all the time.
Okay, so we have a good question here. Uriel Carrion, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and I apologize if I'm not. But the question is, what's y'all's average profit loss on sold pistols? So if you're selling a firearm, let's say just to another buyer, if you have that option, what types of losses have you experienced? Don't be too specific.
Usually I try to come as close to breaking even as possible. So I think you have to be reasonable with what your expectations are, especially depending on the market you're in. For you two guys, it might be a little different. For me, it's ridiculous because you can list something up here and nobody goes near it because it's just ridiculous. So, like, let's say, for example, a particular handgun called the CCP cost me like $3 and change, right? So I wound up getting rid of that the same day I brought it home, and I took about a $50 loss on it, about a $50 loss. So I'd say for me on average, $50 maybe is where I'm comfortable because I don't necessarily have to sell anything. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to sit here and say, all right, I've got to sell this gun because if I don't, then, you know, they're going to turn off the lights in my house. I'm blessed to not have to do that. So I'm never in a rush to just get the lowest bidder. You know what I mean? So sometimes you got to take some time, and yeah, sometimes it takes a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, however long it takes to actually sell that handgun. But I'm not in a rush to just get bludgeoned to death by a buyer. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So I try to be reasonable and rational about how I price them. And most of the time, I'd say the maximum for me is about a $50 loss.
Yeah, I would say it's very similar. Really the most I've ever lost on a gun, from what I paid for it, even if it was brand new, was like about 20 to 30 bucks. You know, um, it's 17's correct. It's about finding the buyer, and I don't just trade guns in. I actually sell them to individuals at like gun shows and stuff. And of course, I won't sell a gun unless they have a LTC license to carry and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not just going to sell to a bunch of hoods, but I'm not in any hurry either. So you're going to find a butt for every seat.
So it's one of the disadvantages with buying local. You end up paying just a little bit more, right? You end up paying oftentimes sales tax or just a little bit more of a markup. So I would say to expect, at least for what I do. Sorry, I just kind of clipped my nail a little bit. I would say the loss is somewhere between 10 and 15%, generally speaking. Sometimes it's a little bit more. The worst hit I ever took on a gun, and I'll share this, not specific numbers, but it was a pretty significant hit, was actually on a Colt 45. It was on one of those tan close quarters combat 45s. So it was kind of not really a special edition, but they were kind of hard to find. And it was a pretty expensive gun to start out with. And when I went to sell it, because I wanted to move on to other things, as I often do, I sort of expected that somebody would jump on it in a nanosecond, because again, they're kind of hard to find, but they're expensive, and the loss was tremendous. I mean, it was probably a 30, maybe 35% loss, maybe even a little bit more than that. So I had to kind of learn a little bit. I had to kind of take my punches on that and strategize again how I would sell firearms. But yeah, that was kind of tough.
Mm.
Now, what I have found is that when I buy a gun on GunBroker, I actually have more luck selling it for profit. I don't know if you guys have noticed anything like that. I know KSU usually go local, but I mean, some of the M&Ps I've had that I sold, I've actually made money off of them. There's been several guns where I've actually made anywhere from $50 to $75 on the gun. So that's why a lot of times I'm very attracted to GunBroker, because you can buy them sometimes ridiculously cheap, and then you can actually sell them to make a little bit more money back, which is always beneficial to me.
Yeah. I think the one thing though, and maybe Big Johnson, you might know this, but I think you have to be careful with making money on gun sales, because I think, can you eventually be classified as a dealer if you make money on firearm sales? I think that's a federal law.
The only thing on something like that, though, is that you don't disclose the price. It's a private individual. So
private individual sale.
Yeah, the only thing you do is you fill out the paperwork, and the money never goes to the actual FFL. It is exchanged between me and party B, and I never tell them what I sell them for. So good luck trying to prove that.
Yeah, and when I sell them to an individual, I do
IRS.
Yeah, I do a bill of sale.
I'm going to get audited.
I do a bill of sale for the serial number, their name and their information and their LTC number, license to carry number, but I don't put the price on it, because that's nobody's business. I do what I want to do, and nobody needs to know that. So.
Right. And hopefully nobody's watching this, because now they're going to change the law. That's going to make you have to write the price down that you sell it for.
Yeah, right. Channel Cat Chaser was asking, did it have the Otis cleaning kit? Yeah, it had the whole 9 yards in it. I mean, it was a beautiful gun, and that's one of those ones that I will probably forever regret selling, because getting into one again, and you can still find them, they're more expensive now. So, oh well, live and learn, right?
Yeah. Yep. Let's see.
So I did get the shield side back finally.
Oh yeah, is it still scratched?
No, it's I think they gave me a brand new one. They didn't even put any paperwork in the box, but it came in a new box. The adjustment little thing that comes with it was brand new, new battery. So I don't know if it's I'm assuming it's brand new, because it doesn't look like the one I had. It's a little bit cleaner. So but yeah, I mean, it's bright, nice and bright, you know, the dot looks really good. The glass is nice and clear. So as long as I don't look at it too hard, it should stay that way. So
Cool.
we're gonna, you know, run it through its paces, hopefully this weekend, and see how this thing shoots and performs. So it's pretty cool. Pretty happy about that.
Nice, nice. Frank Hellman is saying that, you know, you just admitted something online, so I've got to delete the video.
Yeah. Yeah.
No way. This is staying up forever. This is proof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm not violating any laws, so it doesn't matter. You know, there's nothing that states you have to write the price down of any firearm that you sell into a private sale. You only have to have the serial numbers, and it has to be done through the FFL. That's it.
No, and actually on you know, one gun, or actually it was two guns. You know, this guy kind of was wishy-washy on his information, so I walked over to a table and paid an FFL $20, and he did the paperwork right there and ran the guy's information to see if he would pass for me. So, you know, you can do it that way too.
Nice, nice. Yeah, most of the local gun stores here won't do that. I mean, if you get involved with them, there is the transfer fee and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes I'm actually good with that, especially if it's kind of a wonky situation or whatever. I'll be like, you know, let's take it to an FFL, let them deal with it. So I'm good with that. Now I'm going to interrupt us for a second. Hurt One has asked this question, I think 3 times so far, and it's a great question. I feel bad that we haven't gotten to it yet. We've got a few minutes. Do you guys consider yourselves collectors or view guns strictly as tools?
You want to go first, Big J?
Well, I was just going to say, do we have to pick? Because guns are tools, but I collect them also. So, I mean, you know, I have some that I don't give a shit what happens to them. You know, I mean, I just beat them up and then that's what happens. And then I have some that I don't. So,
yeah. I mean, you know, I think I've never understood the point of the gun is just a tool. So it doesn't matter if you would throw it through a window and off of a building and all this other stuff. I mean, I have tools that I use around my property. I have an automobile that's a tool. I have electronics that are tools. I don't beat the shit out of any of them. As a matter of fact, when I'm done using them, I'll oil them up if they need to be. I'll clean them as they need to be. So I look at guns as a tool like I do everything else. I mean, you guys know that every gun I own, I carry. I mean, it's not like I have one that just sits around and looks good on a shelf. But at the same time, I'm a collector too, because if I only looked at that as it's a tool, I don't have 15 chainsaws. You know, I only need 1, maybe 2 if I need a bigger chainsaw. In this case, I've got a lot. Well, I don't want to say that either because that's on video too, but I have several guns that I own that are tools, but they're also collectibles to me, you know? So it's kind of a mixed bag of both. But yeah, I mean, I don't sit around throwing any of my guns in the mud and in the dirt and, you know, taking like, you know, sandpaper or Dremels and dremeling the crap out of the slides. I mean, I would never do that to any tool I own. But at the same time, I understand what they're there for. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Pop's Quest was saying, if you have 1 gun, you have a tool. If you have 2 guns, you're a collector. So that's an interesting perspective. I'm a collector. I've some guns that I consider tools. They're carry guns like the Shield, that sort of thing. That is really a tool. It's not really part of the collection. So I kind of separate the two out just a little bit. Now I'm like 1776. I take care of all of my tools as well. Whether it be the Shield or the G2C or the TSO or something like that, I treat them all the same. You know, some are going to get holster wear, and I understand that. However, I keep them well maintained, and so, you know, it's all part of the kind of collector mentality, I guess. But I think at heart, I'm a little bit of a collector.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, taking it to real tools, you know, if you use tools for your job, you have to maintain them to keep those tools working correctly. So, you know, you don't just take if you're working with a wrench, you don't just take the wrench and throw it in the mud, or, you know, you can, but you're going to clean it off before you put it in your toolbox, more than likely. Some people won't. I know some people that don't, but, you know, just take care of your crap, you know. But I was meaning, like, if I get a scratch on the slide, or if I ding it, you know, at the range or something, am I going to have a baby? No, you know, on some of those. But if it's one of the collector ones and I scratched it or dinged it up, then, you know, I'd be a little more hurt, I guess, than I would for a normal gun. So,
I mean, you know, I don't necessarily have a baby if I get a scratch on my slide, but I'm not gonna lie, I get pissed.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, I don't care if I scratch the crap out of it because I'm I'm in like a jungle somewhere and I'm fending off, an enemy and I'm protecting a village of people or something like that. But if, like, for example, when I was putting on the sights on my P01 and I fucking dropped the slide right on the floor and it chipped the slide. I had the gun in like 2 days. I'm not going to lie. I was pissed. I wasn't sitting there going, oh, it's just a tool. I basically was like, no, and everything happened in slow motion.
I remember that when you did that.
And then I kind of just shook it off. But, it is what it is.
Yeah. They're going to get dings. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, gentlemen, it's been a fantastic conversation. We are just about out of time here. So anything you guys want to say?
Well, always, appreciate the family coming on and, giving us questions, great questions to ask, and, joining us and spending their evening with us. That means a lot. Appreciate you two goofballs, and, definitely looking to the next chat. Next chat will be on my channel, and we'll have a good time.
I would just like to say Bernie 2020. Just kidding. No socialism in my life, so do not vote for him. But I got a holster video coming out tomorrow with a holster company that is female owned and operated. So check that out. It's really interesting. Really good people over there in Virginia. So definitely check that out. Got the PPS finally up and running. So that'll be pretty neat. I'm probably going to take the 48 out again because I threw that Apex trigger in and it's like night and day, just the feel of the trigger. And I want to see if I can just shoot it a little bit better. But I think that's it for now. And at some point, I'm getting the Trigicons put on the PX4. So once I get that, I'll do an update on that because I like that gun. That's one of those guns that, oh yeah, I'll probably sell it, and then I keep looking at them like, God, something about that damn gun that I like, and I don't know what it is yet. So it's probably going to be a keeper.
Nice. A couple quick things coming up. I've got the episode 3 for the AR pistol. Excited for that. And another if I could only have one, actually 2 back to back. I don't think I've ever done that before, so you may not see another one for a while. Those things are kind of a pain to put together, but otherwise, you guys, thank you so much for joining us as always and spending your Wednesday evening with us. We love each and every one of you guys, and it's so much fun to hang out with you. Saw some new faces tonight as well. That's awesome. I love to see this keep on growing. So you guys stay safe, be warm out there, and we will catch you next Wednesday night.
Thanks, everyone. Carry on.
Bye.